today we have a commercial director, an agency owner, a rental business owner, and a family man, all in one. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Lamoureux. We all know how difficult it is to balance our everyday lives as filmmakers, and today we are going to explore the ways that Derek does it. I promise you, as the podcast gets further, we dive deep into not only how to survive in the filmmaking world, but how to thrive. And if you want to know exactly what it takes to make it as a director in this industry, you are going to want to tune in. So welcome to the Apple Box Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Lau, and I'm sitting across the man of the hour, Derek Lamoureux. Let's get it. Today we have Derek Lamoureux, producer and director here in Toronto, Canada. Bro, let us know who you are. Who's Derek as a director and as a person?
Well, I mean, I think to sum it up, if I was to say who I am as a person, would be trying to spend 50% of my time on set and the other 50% traveling and just living life doing what I love. Whether that be at sports games, hanging out with friends, but I would say it's like a 50-50 split.
Oh, nice. Okay. So why 50-50?
I think everyone's always searching for that balance of like, how do I balance out the crazy life of film sets? And it's like most people are like 100% in and they're like, I'm just, going full tilt. And for me, it was like I realized probably a few years in that I needed to balance out all of the film stuff I was doing and keep my life semi-balanced. Now, I do a poor job of that a lot of the time still.
I was going to say, that's...
If we're being real,
that's tough.
I would say some weeks it's like 100 to 0 in both directions.
Right. Because I was going to say, like, film life is just insane. It consumes your life.
Yeah, especially directing projects. What I find is like I'll take on a project and now that's the only thing I can think about when I go to bed, when I wake up. It's like I'm thinking about this project, what's going to be the story, what's the treatment, and then until that project's wrapped in post, I'm still thinking about it, which I think being a director is so interesting because you're involved in the whole process,
from beginning to end.
And a lot of people, they don't see that on a film set, right? So it's like I'm thinking about that project until it's signed, sealed, and delivered, and sometimes I'm thinking about it even after. I'm like, maybe I'll do a director's cut.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And even like perhaps even performance, right? How well it performs and whatever platform it releases on.
Yeah.
I'm sure that consumes your mind a little bit.
Some do really well and you're like, oh, wow, this was a hit. And then some you have that you thought were going to be good and then don't do well at all. And then you're just like, oh, am I a failure? Should I be doing this still?
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because I'm sure like directors are going to face that they're going to have to face the haters, I guess you can say. Yeah. Right. What is something that you can give advice on people who have to deal with negative comments?
I mean, it's hard because a lot of the advice that you're giving or receiving or feedback is probably going to be from other filmmakers. Right. The general population, I've realized, watches the videos that we create as filmmakers and they love them. They generally don't have feedback because they just like to consume. Right. So for me, it's hearing from other filmmakers that I respect and go, oh, this is not up to par. This could have been changed differently. I think honestly, like creative criticism is always good because no project is going to be perfect. I try to release only the ones that are close to perfect. There's a lot that don't, come out on my Vimeo or my Instagram. Yeah. But for the most part, if it's comes out with my name in it, I want it to be close to perfect. So if people have thoughts and opinions, I've learned to just either accept them or B, just completely ignore them.
Well, I mean, if it's constructive, then it's great. You always want constructive criticism, right? I think there's some that to kind of have like a little bit of a malicious intent to it. Maybe there's a bit of jealousy. I don't know. But I
remember this one commercial we did, and I'm not going to pinpoint it, but people could probably figure it out. Yeah. And a lot of people commented or messaged me and be like, hey, man, good ad, simple concept, actors were bad. Oh. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to disagree potentially that maybe it wasn't as strong as it could have been.
Right.
But like that's the same in every project. You always have a factor, whether it be actors or the DP or the location or whatever it is. Something may have been a factor that didn't lead to the best result. And I mean, as long as you know that as a director, then you move on.
Right. So does it bother you when the performances are the issue? Because I know that's obviously a big part of the director's job is to get the performances out of the actors.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if this story or the emotion isn't conveyed properly on set, I do take a lot of that to heart of like, well, why didn't I get it?
Right.
And I think over the last 2 or 3 years, I've really started to realize, well, sometimes you just won't.
Yeah.
And as a director, you really got to know when to keep pushing on set, and then eventually when you have to move on. And if you don't get what you need, that's when I think my biggest advice to people starting out directing is always like, know what you want, but be able to pivot right away. And I think a lot of the times, sometimes I'll pivot the idea of an entire ad based on seeing people perform on set.
Interesting. So I know you do a lot of commercials, right? Is that your main?
I would say commercials are definitely the main thing that I've done since day one.
Yeah.
I do love the doc space. I've spent a little bit of time in the doc world.
Yeah.
Short films, features, not really something I've dove into, but I want to. I have some stuff in progress actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Anything you can talk about or?
There's one project specifically that we started back in 2019, and unfortunately the pandemic kind of slowed us down.
Right.
But it was a feature-length doc. It's called Road to the Show. It was on a player getting drafted to the NHL.
Yeah.
We went to the NHL draft. We did everything, and then unfortunately the last bit of our filming couldn't be completed because of COVID, and since then the project's kind of in limbo with a couple different producers to help get it to the next stage.
Yeah.
But that was my first kind of kick at the cat of producing my own feature, other than working on some other features as like a cinematographer that have gone to like Netflix or show runs.
Right. Because I know directing documentary and commercial are two totally different things.
Super different. Yeah. And
maybe talk about your experiences on both of those fronts.
Yeah. Directing commercials is like, your time consumed for, maybe a month and a half, 2 months, let's say. And then you maybe have 1 to 3 days on set. So it's less time.
Yeah.
A doc project traditionally for me, even if it's like a 5-minute or 10-minute, it's like a 6-month entail.
Wow.
This feature that I mentioned, I mean, it was a year, 30 days of filming, and we're still not done.
Right.
So
wow.
I have mad respect to people that can do both at the same time. I realized that I could not. It's just being in the commercial world and being in the doc or other film world is just, I think it's hard to do both well. So my brain, I get a creative project, I work on it, and then when that's wrapped, I'm on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. Nothing's really staying on my plate for a long while. So when I'm talking to other filmmakers that are like, I want to break into one space or the other, I think you're probably going to have to put more focus in one area or the other with your directing and build up a portfolio in one or the other.
So one of the things that I hear a lot, and this is to do with a lot of cinematographers as well as directors, is that the argument of, do you niche down in something or do you have a variety of something in your reel? So you're telling me that it's more recommended coming from you that you niche down as a director, maybe at least initially?
I think initially is the key word.
Interesting.
Because, early on, my niche commercially was like lifestyle commercials. It wasn't cars, it wasn't sports, it wasn't food. It was lifestyle commercials that were shot on location. I worked with a lot of great people, and that's kind of what we became known for.
Yeah.
Now, many years later, I want to go outside of that. Right. And it's now a little bit more challenging for me to break into food or car space just because my brain, A, doesn't think that way, and B, people know me as something else.
Yeah.
So I won't say it's the best solution, but it definitely led to getting more work in that area that I was really passionate about and really good at.
Yeah.
And still passionate about, but I just want to try other stuff.
Right. So do you find that it affects like the way you find work? Like being known for something then affects your ability to land a gig in say cars or
100%. I don't think people are reaching out to me to direct car commercials.
Right.
As much as I've shot a couple ads recently, and I'm hoping that leads to something.
Yeah.
I think people very much look at the work that you're doing as a director and are like, I want that for my production company, my agency, whatever. Right. And they're hiring me based on that
specific thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably more so in the commercial realm than it is in probably perhaps in the documentary realm, would you say? Because documentary, I would say more of the basis is based off of the story itself. And if you can tell a great documentary on, say, I don't know, subject number one, subject number two being a totally different genre, they'll probably still hire you based off of just your ability to tell a story. Would you say that's right?
I agree. Yeah. I think the doc world is, and that's kind of why I've tried to revisit maybe going back in the doc space as well. Is just because you have that flexibility. You don't really have to get locked into a certain niche. You can just say, I do documentaries.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's probably very similar with the feature world, or like the short film world. I've never dabbled enough in those to really know.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to Derek growing up.
Sure.
Let's talk about how you became a director. Now you're an agency owner. You said you run a rental business. You've created a success for yourself. So let's talk about how you got there. How did Derek start as like a director?
I think like many of us, it was either we started filming. So I started with the camera in my hand. I don't think the word director ever came up initially. It was I wanted to use video as a means to creatively tell stories. So I think my first mini film was in high school creating something, and then I kind of transitioned into like music. And not in like the band sense, but just in like the performance sense. And then I kind of got out of the music entertainment industry. I thought I was going to be in like PAs and concerts and doing that type of thing. Got out of that and started doing wedding videos and commercials at the same time.
Okay.
And I had good success with both. Luckily, I would say my first commercial I did for a college mental health association. And luckily, it got picked up by Cineplex.
Oh, nice.
And Cineplex distributed that commercial across Canada.
Holy crap.
For free.
That's pretty crazy.
It was really good timing. It was at Christmas time, I think, back in like maybe 7-8 years ago.
How did you even get to that point? Like, how did they get?
So I'm not sure the full story, but we finished the commercial. I pretty much shot, edited, directed the whole thing.
Was it like a spec?
No, they paid for it. Yeah, they paid.
So it was a client landed.
The client picked, me as a production company person.
Oh, okay.
And when the project was finished, I remember them saying, we're going to explore getting it picked up in Sarnia, actually. So they were going to Cineplex to try to do a free thing to get the commercial played in Cineplex during Christmas. And then I remember going to Cineplex in London just to watch a movie. I don't remember what it was. And I saw the ad.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is interesting. This is my ad. Didn't know it was. I was super pumped. And then I messaged them. They're like, yeah, like Cineplex picked it up. And they just wanted to do because it was a mental health thing. And they wanted to promote it across, I guess, the country.
Yeah.
And then so people saw that. And that kind of was what sparked me directing. And I really didn't know directing. I was still
you
like,
were just like a filmmaker.
I was a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I think, people get locked into these terms of like, I want to be a director. I want to be a DP. And it's like, you know what? Just make some good stuff.
Yeah.
And find good people. And honestly, that's what I did. I just found people that were really good at their things. And I realized early that I was better not behind the camera. Definitely not behind a computer editing. Those were not editing was not my strong suit. Anyone knows me will know that I passed that off right away.
Yeah.
But I liked being behind the camera, but I liked being on set. Mm-hmm. So I think, I tried ACing, I tried gaffing on small crews and still kind of found myself directing.
I see.
And it was like I wanted to have the idea. I wanted to be involved from start to finish, and I love that interaction on set of being to talk to different departments. And I think for the most part, I still stick in a smaller to medium crew space. I love that wheelhouse of working with the small team that everyone's like there for.
You're collaborating.
Yeah, they're collaboration and like everyone's passionate about it.
Yeah. I noticed that especially like in smaller space, like everybody's there kind of wearing sometimes most of them are wearing multiple hats and that makes them feel more involved and more connected to the actual work.
Yeah.
Which makes it way more fun as a director, because then now you're like in a group. It's just overall just more cohesive.
It is. And you know what? As a director, there's some days where I'm just sitting behind the monitor and watching performance. And there's other days where I'm putting up lights and sitting behind the monitor. My brain has to do both. Yeah. So I love the ability to still play as a filmmaker, but still be able to focus as a director.
Do you ever heard of Pony Smasher?
No.
Pony Smasher, that's his YouTube name. That's a nice real name.
Okay, I was like, wow, that's a very unique name.
I forgot his real name, but he directed a short film called Lights Out that went absolute viral. And because it got viral, Hollywood picked it up and hired him to do the Hollywood version and direct it. And one thing that I resonated with that he said was he talked about the experience being like he's so used to going to the next scene and just being like, let's pick up the camera and let's go. But over there, it's like, what do you mean you guys need 45 minutes to set up the next scene? It's almost like you want to grab the stuff yourself and do it. And I think being in a small to medium crew size allows you, I'm always the type, even as a DP, to I want to like grip a little bit. I enjoy playing with the toys, if you will.
Yeah, there's sometimes where like the camera prep comes in and it's just like, I'll just sit there and, watch, get hands on. I like it. It's like, camera prep's like Lego for adults, but like, it's just fun to be in there. And I never want to lose sight of like why I started doing it, which was to tell stories and do something that I love to do.
Yeah. So what would you say your aspiration is? Like, what's your dream
as
a director?
I would love to get a project that I direct onto a streaming platform. I think that's the next goal. I was hopeful, still I'm hopeful that our hockey doc will be at that point, but maybe it'll be another story.
Right.
Maybe it'll be maybe it'll be a film. I'm not sure, but I think that's probably the end goal. I don't think it's to move to Hollywood. It's not to do features every day. I'm pretty happy living here. And, if that opportunity ever came, I think I would have to talk to my family and friends and see if it made sense.
Yeah. So you start off as a director and then you opened up an agency, you said, and a rental house.
Yeah.
So why did you venture out into other businesses?
So I went to school for business and I've always kind of like been more business savvy than I think many would lead on. That know me. I'm a pretty outgoing, creative guy, but really in the back of my mind, business has always been a big part of that. And I always contemplate these numbers of like 51-49. And is it 51% business, 49% creative? But they're very, very close.
Right.
And so I love the idea of owning business. I like the idea of doing things that are related to business. So the first company I ever started was a recording company. And that flopped. I was in high school and it just didn't go well. We didn't know what we were doing. But that transitioned into a production company. And when I started my production company, LC Productions, it was just me. And then it kind of evolved into hiring freelancers and then some employees. And then LC Productions eventually split and became LC Productions and Rue Agency. Rue Agency kind of formed from the need for an agency that would work well with video. So it became a marketing agency specifically focused on using video for marketing.
Okay.
And that's kind of grown over the last few years to work with different clients. And then this year, I started Set Ready, which was a film rental company. And that's kind of been my new, we'll say, passion project because it's a lot of work, but it's fun.
How do you balance like the life of a director, running an agency and a startup and a rental company and a family all at the same time? Like that's a lot on your plate. Like just running an agency alone, I would assume that's tough enough.
Yeah. I mean, so this year I stepped back directing. I think I closed maybe 5 to 10 projects that I put my name as a director this year.
Okay.
And that number had been 2 to 3 times higher in previous years, which I needed a break from creatively. So it was a good year to step back directing stuff. And I knew that the rental company, I planned it last year to launch this year.
Right.
So I knew that I needed to take some time away. I also knew I had some travel plans this year as well. So I took back some of the directing projects that I had done, outsourced a couple, just said no to some. And then I was able to focus on the rental company. And then my agency, we made a lot of strategic hires at the beginning of this year so that I would have to be involved a little less and rely on my team more. So
so you're delegating more of the work. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, That's hard.
Yeah.
As a creative, it's like, I trust you to do something. But honestly, I found people that were really, really good at their work, and I trusted them, and instilling that confidence and trust in them, I think, was really important for me to be able to focus on this next venture. And, trying to juggle all three, yes, it's a challenge, but the right people and just have, made it a bit easier.
It's finding the right team it's what's most important to you.
Yeah, but I will say, like, I definitely not have released everything I needed to for all three. It's definitely, they've all taken a scaled back if I just had one to focus on.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more on the agency side, because, I know nowadays the social climate has changed, and like you being a director, I'm sure you understand, the artistic side and point of view of like, everyone loves the silver screen and like, that whole thing. And nowadays everything's turned vertical. I would love your opinion on the whole 9:16 conversion and everything that's happening, because as an agency, you have to accommate for that, right? And that's an extra element you have to add into your client packages.
Yeah, it's been creatively a very hard thing to swallow, putting on my agency hat versus my director filmmaker hat.
Yeah.
A lot of the times you make decisions as a filmmaker based on the creative needs of your selfishness of what you want to do for the best interest that you think creatively. And a lot of times those may be true and they may be right. But ultimately, when I put on my agency hat, I have to think about the thing that's going to be best for the client. Best for that brand. And so it's a hard toss up, because those two inner voices in my head, they battle back and forth of like, we should do this, we should do this. So sometimes I'll have projects that I release that are more me driven as a director. And then I have projects that are more client focused.
Right.
But trying to juggle this balance between 16:9 and 9:16 is a very hard one.
Yeah.
Because you now get asked every project, hey, can we shoot this vertically and horizontally? And you're like, well, it's impossible.
It's literally
impossible.
Literally impossible.
Until every sensor is made square.
Yeah.
And then maybe it becomes an option. Right. I don't know.
Right.
I'm still praying for the rotation sensors on every camera. Yeah. Maybe we have that. I don't know.
One day it'll come out, I'm sure.
But right now, it's how do we balance that thing? So what we've done is we shoot most of our commercials still horizontally, and then we will crop for vertical. So the vertical is definitely the second phase. It's the afterthought. Even if we know it in pre-production, we'll plan a couple shots, but to this day, we're still shooting most of it horizontally.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, as we were talking earlier, I've kind of off the air, I've shot a lot of stuff vertically just to play around with for my own personal content.
Yeah.
And I've seen the regret of not shooting that horizontally.
Yeah, because you can't turn it back.
No, and that's the thing.
That's the thing.
Like you could crop in horizontally to vertically, and I think people accept it.
Yeah, it's almost like, I guess people don't expect, the greatest like imagery coming from vertical, because that's not what it's meant to show. It's not meant to illustrate the greatest cinematography in the world.
Yeah, it's really hard to go from vertical to horizontal and be conscious of things like framing and composition and all of those.
Changes everything.
It just, when you flip your image vertically and now you have all this real estate that you never had before.
Yeah.
It's just very different. Whereas if you shoot it horizontally and then crop in vertically, it's like, okay, now you have a tighter image.
Do you feel that this has impacted the industry in a positive or more of a negative way?
I like to think that it's neither. I think that it can be positive, because now we're seeing opportunities for filmmakers who can specialize in creatives and YouTubers and TikTokers and Instagram influencers who can specialize in capturing that niche for 9:16.
Right.
And then you still have the traditional film's never going to go away. Movies, TV shows, they're never going to go away. They're not going to switch. I hope not.
Imagine anytime just going to a theater and it's like, oh my God, 120 feet that way.
I don't think it works for anything other than phones.
Yeah.
Like, it really is not practical for a TV. Like our eyes are horizontally shaped.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that there's always going to be a market for horizontal. And I think, the fact that there's a growing need for vertical is awesome. Maybe more people will find a niche there.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't mean that filmmakers need to be mad or they need to transition. It's two different worlds. And if they come together, awesome. But if
Right.
they don't, then let them be independent.
Right. So as an agency, then I guess for you, it's just so much, it's more so about adapting to the current climate and how you can, as long as the climate serves the client, that's your number one base.
Yeah, if someone tells me, "Oh, we want to do a vertical video," and I ask them and they don't give me a good reason, I'm going to say, "Well, you're just doing it because you think it's trendy."
Interesting.
So I will confront and go back and forth with clients on what exactly their needs are before they throw out this idea of let's shoot it TikTok style. And I'm like,
Right.
that means nothing, because TikTok style just means you filmed it on a phone and you're hoping for this to go viral. And that's what some clients are wanting, is they're like, we just want to create something that's viral. And I'm like, you can't. That's impossible.
You can't ask for viral.
No,
you can't predict it.
No, you can't predict it. And it's like, people think that horizontally, people tried that with YouTube. They'd be like, let's try to make viral ads. And it's like, that's not how ads become viral.
Right.
So for me, it's fighting to make sure the cause of shooting vertical or having vertical makes sense.
Yeah.
So if they say, hey, we're running an Instagram stories campaign, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We should have something vertical.
Right. And it's interesting because I guess you kind of dabbled in both worlds, right? The world of the artist, and then the world of the business, if you want to call it that, the back end and the whole marketing aspect of it. Which one do you prefer to be in?
Well, there's a lot of money on both sides of the table that I'm invested in. So I don't know if I could sit here and pick one.
Okay. But which one do you enjoy, I guess?
Ultimately I enjoy the film side more. I mean, my background, the reason I started this was for film. The reason I started Rue, the reason I started Set Ready, the reason I started LC, they all based around film. So I think my interest is always going to lie more in film, in the creative world. But again, I think my brain still always goes back to the business side. I just don't think I would pick marketing over video, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would still land for the creative side over marketing.
Is there any struggles that you're going through right now as a creator that you're still trying to work on?
I mean, finishing stuff. Having all these grand ideas and finishing, I think, has been, maybe I need a trip to
finishing stuff, meaning like actually like finishing the treatment type of thing, or more like following through with
the final stage.
Interesting.
Like between this doc, a podcast I was telling you about, this YouTube channel, a few other ideas that have been kicking around. They're all either done pre-production and through production. And some of the independent projects that I have too, is there's just not enough time in the day to work on all these passion projects or ideas, let's call them. So my biggest struggle is getting that to the finish line. And, really, if I could go back, I probably would start less of these things.
Yeah. So more focused, more on specific things as opposed to trying to do too much.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to our point at the beginning of like, if you're starting off and you're trying to build your portfolio, having food, car, lifestyle, all of this stuff in your portfolio is probably just going to mean you're shooting a million pieces of content every year, none of them being that great.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer in like, you need to make a couple projects a year that you're super proud of, you sink your own money into, and they're amazing. And that's the difference of like getting to that next level. Whereas a lot of people just treat it like a job and they're just like, oh no, I got paid. This is where my job stops.
Right. So as a director, I know one of the major things is, you have to get spec work out there, at least at the beginning stages of your career, because you have to show the world what you can do. How much of your own investment, because you talked about putting your own money into it, investing your own time and money into it. Like for the people who say can't afford to put too much into it, what's the necessary step that you can recommend for them to get to that first spec?
So I think my first couple projects were maybe less on the money side and more on the time. So the way I approach every spec project from a commercial standpoint is it starts with a real project. So every project on my portfolio that people are like, oh wow, how did you pull this off? And I'm like, well, I bet you the budget was not huge on this one. So what I would do, and this is, even with that very first ad that I, got to Cineplex, was like, okay, what can I do with this idea that this client has and take it to the next level? How can I make this, $1,000 or $10,000 idea, make it a $10,000 or $100,000 idea?
Right.
So I would put the time in pre-production and production and post to make it more than I was getting paid. And I would do that on a select number of projects where I thought the idea was worth it. And those projects are the things that people look at on my Vimeo and go, oh, wow, that's good. How did you do that? And it's like, well, that was the project where I either lost time on, or eventually, as I had more money to put aside, I would pay money to do. And there's been a few projects, even this year, where I will pay out of pocket for crew, locations, talent, even though it's a paid project.
Yeah.
Just because I want it to be that much better.
Yeah. So you're very selective with what you think is worth your portfolio, if you will, what's worth going into your reel.
Yeah. I had a phone call on the way here today, and it was just like, all right, we've got 3-4 projects sitting in post. Let's pick maybe 1 or 2 of them that we spend an extra amount of money on to go that next step, whether that's, in post, if it's getting, a more elaborate sound mix, or if that's getting a more elaborate colorist or whatever. And sometimes that decision happens beforehand. Sometimes it's like, oh, this is really good after looking at it in post. We're going to make that decision now.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, once you get to that stage, I guess, when you're starting to get paid as a director, there comes a stage where everyone faces of like learning how to price yourself to the next level. What kind of recommendations do you give young directors who are now looking, perhaps they created their first spec, or perhaps they got a few paid gigs and now they're starting to see a little bit of money in? How do they get to that next level where they get that kind of bump up in pricing?
Well, I mean, I don't know the secret to this question, but I mean, my approach was I would raise my prices to the public, to people, to prospective clients, and then I would still, discount them or offer them an incentive or do more value for them until my calendar was so full that it made sense not to offer that discount anymore.
Interesting.
And so eventually I just kept raising my price to a point where I would either work less and make the same, or keep working the same amount and make more. And then I would use that determining factor of like, okay, let's say my goal was 20 projects for the year. If I hit that, well, then the next year I'm just going to make my goal maybe 15 projects.
Right. And then scale the price according to that.
And scale the price up. Yeah.
Interesting.
But I would still always show, and I think this is important, is show people what the price should have been. Even if I was, discounting it or giving them a deal, whether...
And what is that based off of? Is that based off of like, say, a specific union rate, or is that based off of just a rate that you've created?
It's just a rate that I created, honestly, in my head.
Cool. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
it's what's worth it for you.
Yeah, I know what other directors make, and
Right.
I know, what friends make, and I have those numbers. But for me, it was like, I want a number that makes me feel valued to come and be a part of a project. But there's a lot of projects where, money's not my MO.
Right.
Like I just want to do something cool.
Interesting.
So there's still a lot of projects I do that are half my rate or for $0,
Right.
just because I want to make something cool. So I think as far as I've got into this, and that's still nowhere near where I would love to be, but I'm still doing stuff for free.
Yeah. That's very interesting, because free is a very touchy topic in this industry, because it's very debated and highly debated, especially early on in your career, where people are doing things for free. You're saying that you still do things for free at this stage of your career, and I know perhaps we can share this with the more of the beginner level people, or people who are just emerging now in this industry. That free, it doesn't necessarily mean bad. I guess it just means picking the right projects to do it for.
Yeah, if I know, and I mean, I say free in like my time.
Right.
The project may still have a budget for
Right.
it. I'm just using that to not pay myself.
Yeah.
So I may pay crew with that budget. I may pay actors. I may pay locations. But I will take zero. Or I will take a loss.
Or you take that money and invest it somewhere else to make the project better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So I think there's a difference between doing something completely for free
Right.
and not knowing the value of the project
Yeah.
versus doing something for free yourself and being able to put that money somewhere else.
I'm sure you probably get pitched on a lot of projects that don't reach your standard or don't reach your budget range. And, you're forced to say no. And I know that a lot of people struggle with saying no at the very beginning of their stages of their career. How have you gotten more comfortable, I guess, with saying no? And there's been a situation where you said no to a significant project in terms of like a budget, but perhaps it just didn't align with your creative vision.
Yeah. Saying no is hard because, we all love money and we all love working.
Yeah.
So, saying no to a project means you're probably going to be saying no to one of those two things or both. For me, it just became about time, between directing and all of these other things I have going on. I couldn't say yes to everything. So my situation may have been a little bit different because I couldn't say yes to everything. Otherwise I wouldn't have had time to do these other things. So luckily, I have these other things filling up my calendar or helping me financially, or that I'm creatively invested in. So saying no for me was a bit easier. But when I was first starting, I think I didn't say no to a lot, to be honest. I would just I would say yes to everything and I would just shoot it all.
And you'd be overwhelmed then.
You'd be overwhelmed. You'd be like creatively burnt out. You'd be mentally exhausted. It's not a healthy thing. But it helped me know what I liked.
Right.
And that was, I think, the good thing for me of like, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have realized I wanted to be a director. I probably still would have had a camera in my hand, or I still would have been doing sound.
Mm-hmm.
I know I wouldn't have been editing, but I wouldn't have figured out as fast what I like doing.
Yeah. And you mentioned burnout, and burnout's something that I bring up to a lot of these guys because Nick Pilecki, someone who you've worked with a few times, mentioned that burnout is like the artist's version of like depression. You know? And it's almost like, do you feel like burnout is something that is almost inevitable in every artist? And if it is, how does somebody deal with burnout? How do they even recognize that they're in a burnout?
Yeah, I think, the mental health in the film industry is probably not talked about enough at all. It's an area where, I wish people were more open, because I think a lot of creatives, if they're not going through it, will go through a form of depression or some type of burnout.
It's just the nature of our work.
It's the nature of what we do. We do stuff that mentally exhausts us. And then on top of that, now we have social media that tells us how many people are doing things better than us.
Yeah.
So you compare yourself daily to other people. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge that I see with friends and people in the industry is, they're not talking about the fact that they're burnt out, or they're taking on too many projects and they're not spending time with their significant other or family, or they're spending too much time in one direction or the other and they're not focused on the film. So it goes back again to that balance that we talked about of, this 50-50 number.
Yeah.
And, I got asked this when I was at Profusion a couple weeks ago, and people said, how do you juggle everything? And my answer was, you have to find a system that works for you. So my system has been, I'll go really hard for a couple weeks or months doing, 70, 80 hour weeks where I'm just all consumed by this creative energy. And then I do hit that phase of burnout. I'm mentally exhausted. I can't think. I'm probably going to enter some type of stage that's not going to be good for my mental health. And then I just kind of close up shop and I go away. And for me, that outlet has been traveling and camping and getting to spend time with my family and friends outside of a film environment. Yeah. So I kind of found that last year, and that was kind of my outlet to get away. And now this year, I plan to do more of that to offset what I knew was going to be a busy year.
And do you think it helps you actually be more productive when you are in the film, like working on something film, because you are immersing yourself away from this world?
I think so, but I think more importantly than like that was just that planned separation for the two.
Right.
So I knew that when I'm here, even if I'm present in family or friends, I'm still always thinking about that project.
Right.
But if I turn myself off and said, okay, every project's done, I'm going to do this thing and that's going to be traveling or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fully present for you. And what I realized was being fully present was a lot better than being half present all the time. So I would rather be fully present half the time than half present all the time.
That's powerful.
So for me, that was a big game changer in the last 2 years. And I think it's helped with my own mental health of not facing a crazy burnout. And that's what I've tried to help some other filmmakers who have maybe reached out or had questions about, is find that thing where you can kind of disconnect, because film can consume you.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you don't want to lose your family or your friends to this. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen plenty of examples in the industry, outside the industry, of how it's not. So I think it's something that I think more people should talk about, and people should be open to talking with their friends, colleagues, family about, like, hey, you know what? I do have to turn down this project because I've just been doing too much lately and I need to spend some time. But people are always worried about what other people are going to think, or they're worried about what Instagram's going to think.
Right.
Don't fucking worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if I can
No,
swear.
no, of course you can. Yeah. I think I agree with everything you said there. I think it's, it's difficult for a lot of people to come off as, I guess you can, or show their vulnerable side, because it might make them seem like perhaps either they're unstable or they have this whatever perception that they fear people have of them. But we have to, one thing I always said is we have to realize that what we're doing requires so much emotional and spiritual investment, or whatever form you want to call it, but internal investment, that you are putting yourself out there in your work. In one way or another, you're putting yourself out there, and you are using more than just your body. This isn't a regular job where you're just carrying a camera and hitting record button.
A lot of people think
that's
that.
my job, like a lot of it is creative, and creative comes from the heart, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I agree. I think it's definitely something that people definitely need to speak up more on. I think it's a very common problem that people suppress.
Yeah. It's definitely something that I wish wasn't so taboo in our industry. And I know other industries, sports is a great example. People don't want to talk about it in that. But there's just no, people expect you to be on all the time in this industry.
Yeah.
And the truth is you can't. Like, there's no way that a human being can function at the highest level creatively and be perfect all the time.
Yeah. And I know you talked about Profusion, and people got to ask you questions there. We will get into like how you got to there on that stage, but do you find that a lot of the questions you get from other people who are wanting to learn from you, are they more based off of like the lifestyle and the culture of filmmaking, or do you find that they're more like technical, like people want to know practical information?
Well, I mean, let me just say this. I'm very humbled when people ask me questions, because I don't have all the answers. So I appreciate everyone that does. It used to be more technical, but I stopped posting things that made me look like a technical expert. And as a director, a lot of it was more about things that you can't really talk about, like what lens or what light or, all of those things. So I catered my content to not have those types of questions, because I was getting those, and it's great to say what lens and filter you're using, but ultimately I wanted to go a step further and talk to people about how we got to get this location, or how we got the actors to perform in such a way.
Yeah.
So now most of the questions that people have are industry related. How do I get to the next level? How do I switch from, a big question is, how do I shoot from weddings to commercials? That was my transition of background. So people ask that a lot. And I think the answer is like, you just have to work.
Yeah. It's almost like a natural, it's just how the journey goes. You just have to keep going, and then
like
people just happen.
People look at social media, and I honestly don't spend a lot of time on social. People may think I do, but I don't. And the reason is like, I try not to get in that stage of comparing myself to other people.
It can get very toxic. Yeah.
It's very toxic. And I just look at other people, even like friends that I know. I'm like, oh man, they got to do this cool thing. And I know that they're not. It's just perception on social is that they think I am, or I think they are.
Right.
And it's this weird game that we play in our heads of like, they're busier than me. They've got more work. They did something cool. And it's like, now. Everyone's doing the same game.
Look, as long as you're still in the game, you're winning. It's what I always say. You know, like if you are a director or whatever you want to be, a documentary director or the biggest agency owner, whatever. If that's what you want to be and that's what you're still doing when you're 85 years old, then you're doing great.
Yeah, you're doing it right.
You have nothing worried about. You don't have to worry about everyone else. Like you're doing great, you know, in what you're doing. So let's go into that Profusion thing because I know you talked for Nanlite or Nanlux, and I didn't think they're all the same.
Yeah.
Right. How did you get to that point where you got recognized by them?
Yeah. So maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I had done my first brand deal with a company called Zacuto.
Yeah. They make the EVFs and
they make EVFs and some cages, and I had reached out to them and I had wanted to work with them. And I think, you know, I'm telling this part of the story because a lot of filmmakers will reach out to brands and they want free shit.
Right.
And brands get 100 of those messages a day.
Yeah.
I was one of those people that sent the message, but I was just like, I already use your stuff. Can I do some content for you? So then after I used that, I used kind of that package of like, hey, this is what I did. And then I approached other companies. 3 years ago, I was chatting with some people at Vistech and I was at the Profusion show just as a guest. And I got talking with Nanlite. I was buying a couple of their products and one thing led to another. And I became one of their Canadian ambassadors.
Oh, nice.
Which led to me speaking at their show in 2019 during the pandemic and this year. But it was really because I was using their products with the DPs I was working with or personally using their products for stuff I was shooting.
Yeah.
And it organically kind of formed.
Oh, nice.
Same thing with some other brands that I've done some stuff with or work with. It's through my personal brand just because I use and respect their product.
Yeah. And then now you got to stand on stage and now you're the host or whatever you want to call it, the special guest in the Profusion now.
Yeah. So, I mean, that worked out well because, you know, I love talking about film. I love presenting. I love, you know, doing things like we are today. I love just talking about the industry. And so, you know, when they ask me to talk on stage, it's less about like specific gear and, you know, people can see from that presentation if they were there when they watch the video online.
Yeah.
It's less about, hey, this is what the light we used and here's the settings.
Yeah.
It's like, here's how to be in the industry. Here's how we did this thing. Here's what we used to get there.
Right.
So Nick, actually, him and I did the breakdowns together. And it's just cool to be able to chat with filmmakers that are, you know, at the same level, above or below, that are we're all trying to get to the same thing. And to me, it's a big community.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of the community, I would love to get like your words on just advice on coming from you, just overall, perhaps like maybe specific with directing, but also, like you said, the lifestyle of filmmaking. What kind of advice do you have for people who are coming up in this industry?
I think the biggest advice for no matter what role you want to be is build out a network. It was the first thing that I did that kind of set my career on a good path, was finding other filmmakers that either were like-minded or were better at certain things so that I could focus on what I liked, they could focus on what they liked. It to me is if you can build that community, you're going to find friends and start thinking of people as friends rather than competition. And, you know, we talked about this off air, but if you can foster that sense of community with your competition, you're probably all going to get better.
Yes.
And I'm a big believer that, like, hey, if you get a big project or I get a big project and we've worked together a lot, hopefully we'll be on set together. Yeah. Whether that be me being a PA and you being the director, or me being a director and you being a PA. It doesn't matter what the roles are. Put those aside and just start thinking about how you can make friends and you know, colleagues in an industry that is so competitive.
Yeah. In other words, excuse me. In other words, just let go of the ego.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Let go of the ego. You know, reach out to people that are bigger. Reach to people that are the same, smaller, you know, ask them to come on set. If you're just getting started, you know, ask a production company or director or DP, hey, can I come on set?
Yeah.
also just know that they probably may get asked that question a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe offer them something in addition to that, like, hey, I want to learn this, or hey, I can provide this for you.
Yeah.
Because some people that are at a higher level may be busy or may get asked that question a lot, and they don't want to take a chance on someone that's just starting out.
Right.
So just be prepared for a lot of no's,
Yeah.
and be prepared to just send a lot of messages to people.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of rejection. I guess rejection is one of the biggest like factors that directors would face, because you're probably creating treatments and getting rejected all the time.
Yeah, I mean, having a background in business, I think maybe it helped in getting rejected. Or having, businesses that have done well or failed, I think may have helped. But I think as a director starting out, yes, you're probably going to be closing 10% or less of the projects that you work on. And you just have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where I put a lot of energy into a project and didn't close it. And eventually you'll learn which projects you'll have better chance on. Or once your portfolio gets a little bit larger, maybe you don't have to do as much spec treatments and people are ready to just hire you. That's, the dream situation.
What do you think is the most important part of a pitch then? Do you think it's actually how you pitch it? Or do you think the overall concept just is all concept, or is it the treatment itself? Like, what is the most important part of a pitch?
I don't even think it's the treatment at all.
Interesting.
I think it's the person pitching it. If you're a director or a production company, or those two are one and the same, I think it's you that people are getting sold on. I think all of my work, I'm gonna say 90%, has just been on me having a phone call with them, understanding what they want, and me maybe sharing my idea. But oftentimes it's just like person to person, how can we connect? Whether their interests are travel or family or sports, finding something outside of that pitch to connect on, and then making them want to pick me as a person, not me as a director.
That's very business. Like, that's a very business type of thing to do.
Well, I don't get married to the idea, right? Because at the end of the day, they're hiring me. And if we pivot the idea, I'm not going to get locked into it.
Yeah.
I'm not locked into any idea anymore. I'm just like, maybe I wrote a cool treatment, but if you don't see that vision, but we still get along, I still want to work together. Like, I'm not going to be like, you didn't like my thing, so bye.
Right.
No, I still want to work together.
Yeah. I think that's the ego again, because I'm sure a lot of directors get very, very caught up in or married to their idea and their vision, and they won't separate from it.
Yeah, and I think for me now, it's like I spend a lot less time on the treatment, and because I know that things may change, their needs may change, so I want to be able to be flexible and say, hey, I have this idea, but I'm not locked into it.
Yeah.
So we can run with this, we can do a variation of this, and I'll even go back to the team and be like, all right, we got this project, here's my idea, can you guys make this better?
Yeah. I know there's one like thing that, especially when I was growing up in this industry, one of the few things I told myself that I wanted to be, I was just like a little filmmaker doing videography gigs, and I was like, I want to be a director. I didn't even know what that entailed. Like, I didn't even know what a director did, right? That's what I thought it was, and then when I learned what it was, it's like, I want to be DP. But but when I heard, one of the common things as director that I thought, at least when I grew up, was I need to know everything. I need to know the light. I need to know the right. I need to know how to edit. I need to know all this type. I need to know everything. Now, coming from a director yourself, do you think a director needs to know everything? And at what point do they have to limit themselves and restrict themselves?
I think you kind of nailed it, though, to be honest. I think to be a good director, you need to be knowledgeable in other departments. That level of knowledge, I think, depends on what level you're at. But for me, I would listen to DP podcasts and understand like YouTube videos about lighting and all of that stuff. I didn't want to be a DP, but I knew that if I understood that, I'd be able to connect with DPs better. I would be able to talk about, the 180 rule that oftentimes directors will break because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Or be able to talk, different lens options, or be able to talk different lighting options with a DP and with their teams to be like, hey, I'm thinking this. I don't know how to really do it.
Right.
Or I can kind of get there, but I want you to get me there. And same with art department and like
Acting.
Like, you know,
Right.
I was in acting when I was a kid. So acting
Yeah.
came very natural for me. I could talk
Yeah.
acting to people.
Yeah.
So, and then sound was another thing was, you know, I would rely on learning a few things about sound, but I would rely on the people that I was working with to say like, okay, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
Here's my grand idea. I remember
Yeah.
the first time I ever did like this crazy wide shot that was all dialogue.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with the sound guy. I watched a few videos beforehand and I was just like, I know it's possible. They
Yeah.
do it in movies.
Yeah.
So you tell me how we do it and that's how we'll execute it.
Yeah. But there has to be like so what you're saying is you need to know enough to understand its value of each and every single aspect of the film.
And the foundation so that you can just have those conversations.
But you don't need to know you don't need to be a master of any of that
No,
type of stuff.
not at all. You know, you don't need to know the difference between soft light and
Yeah, like that's the granular
diffusions.
things.
Those
that,
are the
like,
technical, like
that goes to the DP and
yeah,
that
like you
department.
know, when I talk to a colorist or an editor, I'm not just like, hey, can we, you know, do this thing in DaVinci and create a mask on this specific
Yeah.
thing? I'm like, can you just like brighten up her eyes?
Right.
And that's it. And
So
then they
it's-
know.
Yeah, so it's just the director needs to have a more, I guess you can say, more concise with the vision and overall vision. Understand what is a good image or a good video or film, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and you need to be able to communicate
And
to
communicate.
the people that are doing those roles that you've entrusted to be better than you are.
Yeah.
Everyone on set's better than me. They're
Yeah.
all better at something. That's the whole point. If I had
Yeah.
people that were all better directors, then what am I doing, right? But the idea is I want the best of each department to tell me how to do my job and then I look good. Really,
Right.
they're all doing it. I'm just picking the right people.
Well,
And that honestly comes from the business thing is right. If you
Yeah.
run a successful business, most really successful business owners are good at picking the right people.
yeah.
And I
yeah.
think that's what a director should be.
But a director, I mean, that is true. But a director still is the visionary, and without the director, there is no direction for any of them.
Yes.
You know,
I mean,
there's
yes.
that. But yes, I agree with you. Overall.
You definitely do need to have a vision. I don't want to steer
Yeah.
people in the wrong
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
But I have heard, and I don't work with a lot of other directors.
Okay.
So I don't know the true nature of this, but I have heard that a lot of directors are more reserved
Mm-hmm.
in their ideas or feedback. And I like to be the opposite. On set, if someone has an idea, I'm not, I don't like ideas just flowing out there from everyone.
Obviously, because then that's just too much.
It's
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
But if someone has an idea, you know, in production or in post or in pre that they want to raise as a concern to me, oftentimes I'm willing to work with those ideas and oftentimes it makes the projects better.
Right.
I'm not locked into my ideas. And I think that's what makes strong directors is people that are willing to listen to other people because you may have someone that has a really great idea.
Yeah.
And if you're too locked into it, you're never going to see through that
Right.
and be able to maybe change yours or pivot it.
You almost have to be open to listening. If you are hiring people that are experts in their field, it's not like you can tell, the DP that, this is better.
But a lot
know.
of people I've heard
Yeah.
get very stuck in their ways directing
Really?
and won't listen to the people
Interesting.
around them. And I
Yeah.
think anyone that's starting out, listen to people. Don't be the expert. I'm not
Yeah.
an expert in anything. I like to hear other people's ideas.
Right. Right. But I feel like the director perhaps is not an expert in anything technical, but they're expert in the culture of filmmaking.
Yes, for
You know?
sure. Yeah, and they're a director should be an expert in seeing something from start to finish.
Yes.
If you're a director and you're not involved in post,
That's kind of weird.
it's super weird.
Yeah.
But I do see it, and it's just like to
Really?
me that you should be involved in the whole thing. You have to.
Director's not involved in post. That's his thing.
I've heard some stories where the director, kind of finishes up the production day and then isn't as involved in post.
Interesting.
But I think a director's just as important in post as they are in production.
I think the post is the other half. Like, how
Yeah.
do you not?
Yeah, I mean it's equally a third, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, I really appreciate all the info you give, man. You could bring so much value to this industry, especially coming from both sides. Like, I'm losing my voice today. Coming from both sides, like the agency side versus the business side, I guess, versus the creative side. We tend to skew towards one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I very much towards the creative side, but I understand the business side, and finding somebody who's in both worlds, who's operating in both worlds as a 50-50 is an immense value to the community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And honestly, if people have other questions, this is why I love podcasts like this, is people can learn things, and, don't be afraid to reach out, because I'm an open textbook. There's no secrets here.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Cool.